Okay, I'm excited to get going in this interview in our Wealthy Teachers interview series with Sarah McKay, who I'm excited to meet because I have no prior introductions. I feel like, Lindsay, you know a little bit more about Sarah's background, but I'm excited to hear about it myself for the first time.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And I love what she does online. I love her work and her path. So Sarah, why don't we dive into a little bit about that path? Tell us about your work in academia. You can tell us about your research. I know we don't get to talk about that. Well, you do. I think you do talk about your research a lot. But tell us what you studied and where you spent your academic career.
Sure. It feels like kind of another lifetime ago now. So
right?
People may not be able to tell by my accent, but I'm a Kiwi. I grew up in New Zealand, although now I live in Sydney in Australia. And I was probably like so many people that go into academia. I read everything I could get my hands on, the back of the cereal box, always had my head stuck in a book, went through school, loved school, and went into my first year of university very much thinking I'll do medicine, dentistry, law, something like that. And I did a first year psychology paper, and the lecturer said, this was in New Zealand, said, there's this book I think you should read. It's by a neurologist called Oliver Sacks, and it's called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. Now, anyone who's studied psychology, neurology, anyone in that sort of space will know that book. And I read that book, and I was just like, could there possibly be anything else on this planet that would be more interesting than studying the brain? And at that point, this was 1993, there was a very new discipline starting up at another university, Otago University, about 4 hours down the road from where I lived, called Neuroscience, which is really taking together the neuro components from the departments of psychology and pharmacology and anatomy and physiology, and pulling them together into this brand new discipline. So this is back early 90s, and I went, and I just was. That was it. My path was set. So moved universities to study that, and I really haven't deviated it in terms of that fascination ever since. So did in New Zealand, in this part of the world, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, I did an undergraduate, a Bachelor of Science degree, a 4-year degree majoring in neuroscience. Loved that. Just everything about it was amazing. Did a research project in my final year. Loved that. I just could not think of anything else I wanted to do apart from being an academic. Now, there's a bit of a rite of passage in this part of the world. You head off to Europe after your degree. We call it your OE, or your overseas experience. And so I headed off on that, and I thought, well, I'm in the UK working in a pub, because that's what you do after you've backpacked around Europe. I'll check out PhD opportunities. And I was living in Scotland, in Edinburgh at the time, working in a pub with all the other Kiwis and Aussies, and went back in the olden days when you used to pick up like the Nature and Science actual paper magazines, and used to flick through the back of them and the classifieds, and I saw, that's where they used to advertise PhD opportunities, and pre-internet days. And I saw advertised Oxford University was doing a 4-year PhD, a brand new 4-year PhD program in neuroscience. And I was like, that's it. I just knew that was what I was going to do. Little did I know that there was 200 applicants for 5 scholarship places, but I was filled with the confidence of a 21-year-old. I knew I had a really good degree behind me. So I applied, got the scholarship, incredibly fortunate to do that, and so then I landed myself at Oxford University, along with there was 5 of us, 2 other girls and 2 guys doing that 4-year PhD program. Again, love that. Oxford was the most fantastic place to be. I went to a graduate college. It was mostly international students, so we were all graduates, kind of arriving in this country for the first time, and had an absolute ball for a few years. And again, still really love the neuroscience, but I think everyone that arrives in somewhere like Oxford, any of those kind of Ivy League type places, gets a bit of imposter syndrome. They'll figure me out, but I think that that's pretty much par for the course for most academics, isn't it? I had a great time there, but it was really when I was doing my PhD, but I was surrounded by some really smart people. I started going, I'm not quite sure whether... And it was the fault of comparison, what they're all doing and capable of versus me. I was like, I was really excited when journals would all come in print. They would be reading the Journal of Neuroscience, and I'd be reading New Scientist, and I'd be reading the front of Nature and Science just to get the overview. And I started to really, the further along my academic career I got, the more and more and more I started to miss the breadth of my undergraduate education. And I guess I got FOMO. You have to narrow down and narrow down and narrow down. And I always joke until you become an expert in almost nothing. And I felt like I was missing out on learning all of the other stuff. And I sort of, started kind of gently casting out for, as they would call it, alternative careers in science, but I was kind of too scared to tell anyone. Now, I was over in the US one summer and I went to Cold Spring Harbor. The Cold Spring Harbor Labs run sort of summer programs, which are fabulous. I was over there in one of them, and I remember standing in their bookshop, and they had a whole bookcase on alternative careers for scientists, which is such a cheesy, derogatory title. And I remember standing reading this book, and it was an excellent book looking at alternative careers. And a guy was standing next to me, he's now a professor at neurobiology at Stanford, an amazingly intelligent, talented scientist. And he just looked at me and he went, "What are you reading that book for? They're the books that failed scientists read." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not one of them, am I?" Of course. Whoa. So put it back on the shelf, and really then kind of tried to quieten that little voice inside that said, maybe I want to do something else in science, but not this. So got through to the end of my PhD. It was pretty hard work, as it always is. I often joke it's harder to get out of somewhere like Oxford than in. My PhD thesis was really looking at how neurons in the brain wire up during development. And I had a bit of a naive, is it nature, is it nurture kind of question. Is it guided by genetics? Is it guided by experience? The environment, turns out it was a bit of both. I ran really, really arduous lab experiments that went kind of from, I'd get in at 9 a.m, I'd run them all day, overnight the next day, and I'd kind of get home at 5 the next night. So I was kind of missing a night's sleep every 2 or 3 nights, which really messed with me. But it didn't really, in your early 20s, I was pretty tough. I thought I could cope. Met a gorgeous Irish economist when I was there. We just had our 20th anniversary of being together. We're now married and have kids. Anyway, I got to the end of my PhD, and we decided we were a bit sick of the UK and the cold. So we had a moment of, let's write a list of all of the cities in the world where we think would be awesome to go and live. So we wrote down places like San Francisco and Paris, and then we both had Sydney, Australia on the list. My husband's Irish, but he grew up sailing. In a sailing family, and I lived in New Zealand, so it wasn't too far away. And we thought, Sydney, that'll be fun for a year. So he works for Deloitte as an economist, and there was a position coming up. So we thought, well, let's go do that. So came out to Sydney thinking we'd come for a year, and that was in 2002. And I thought I would be very brave when I came to Sydney. I was still writing up my PhD, which I do not ever recommend anyone ever write up a PhD thesis when they're not living in, when they're not near their supervisor, the lab, let alone another country. It was really tough. But I sort of started thinking, you know what, I'm going to investigate one of these alternative careers in science. And so I got a job working for a kind of a breast cancer public health education type branch of the government. And it was boring as anything. I sat there in this office all day going, is this what you do like when you're not working in a lab? Like you have to sit in a chair all day. When you do research, you're up and you're moving around and, you can count your steps and there's a huge variety in the day. And I went, oh, okay, I don't really want to leave academia after all. So I ended up doing a couple of postdocs here in Sydney. One was in spinal cord injury research, which I really felt very passionate about because I felt it was very applied. Looking back now, I can kind of see perhaps one of the problems with my PhD research was it wasn't very applied. It was very theoretical. But this spinal cord injury research stuff was amazing because, it had relevance. But it didn't really get on very well with my postdoc supervisor and thought, oh, look, I'm being micromanaged. Don't like this. There wasn't a lot of money in the lab. Got really fed up, so switched to another postdoc group, which was looking at deafness. So again, very applied. Again, started kind of battling with this postdoc supervisor, a different one this time. And of course, I started thinking, oh, it must be me. And I felt like everywhere I turned, there was a gatekeeper. I would have someone reading my lab book notes. I would have someone saying, these are the experiments I want you to go away and work on. You'd bring the data in. You wouldn't, the data didn't work. Perhaps the pH in a buffer solution wasn't right. Perhaps your stats, there was nothing significant. I felt like I worked really, really hard on every aspect of being a scientist, but nothing ever really kind of worked. You would try and get journal articles published and it would take about a year to write them because academia moves at this glacial pace, and then you'd finally get it written and then the journal would reject it. And you'd rewrite it and another journal would reject it. And then they'd ask for more experiments and you'd do more experiments and they wouldn't work. And then you'd apply for a research grant. And I felt like at everywhere I turned, I was being kind of knocked back, not because I wasn't working hard, just because. And I felt really like I was this square peg in a round hole. And so this was kind of over the space of about 3 or 4 years through these two postdocs, and I became more and more and more doubting of myself. I thought, well, it must be me. And looking at the same time, doing that dreadful thing in academia of going on and searching, journal article publications of people I'd done my PhD with, or that guy who told me to put the book down when I was in Cold Spring Harbour, and looking at all of their Nature and Science and, fantastic publications with these amazing impact, scores. And just, really filled with huge amounts of self-doubt. And look, what year was this? This is kind of like still 2003, 2004. Yeah, it wasn't like there was online forums or Facebook groups or really any kind of online culture where you could go away and explore that. There was still there was a great degree of shame that I felt that I had gone to Oxford. I had this PhD in neuroscience, which I was always so proud to say because of people's reaction. And I was so unhappy. Yet I loved and had this real passion for the science, but I was hating doing it. And so I spent about 3 or 4 years really struggling and grappling with those decisions. And kind of through my PhD and through this time, I really had started. I feel like I'm in a therapy session telling you all this. I'd started.
That's a good thing. That'll help a lot of people. I'd started kind of squirreling away little pieces I'd been writing because I discovered I really loved doing poster presentations at conferences. I loved doing that. Really enjoyed giving talks. Enjoyed any of the public, and we'd have public tour groups through the lab. The Rotary tour group, the old folk would come and do a tour through the lab, and I really enjoyed interacting with them. And I thought, and I was still reading Neuroscientist and thinking, oh gosh, imagine writing for a journal, a magazine like that. So I sort of started doing a little bit of dabbling in that public communication space. And then really got to the end. The second postdoc really started to fall apart. I started
bickering with my then supervisor, and we, I don't know, you guys, do you know what GFP mice are? That's this kind of fluorescent protein in this mouse, and we ended up having this massive falling out over this stem cell experiment in these GFP mice, and it was just, it was really bad, and I thought, I don't think I can keep on doing this. It can't be me that I've had, maybe it is me. My husband kept telling me it wasn't. So I sat down. So this must have been, we're probably here looking at around 2005, 2006-ish. I just got married, so it must have been 2006. And here in Australia, there's a job search engine called seek.com.au. And I sat down in the lab, which is a bit naughty. I can't believe I was quite brave enough. And I wrote science writer in the search engine. First time I'd done that. And all of these jobs went bop, 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 bop in Sydney. And I was like, what? I didn't think that this was like a thing. I thought, there'd be a job in the nature head office in London or something. And there was all of these opportunities for people with a science background. A lot of the prerequisites were PhDs who had experience writing. A lot of it was in pharma, some of it was in marketing, some of it was in, within local Australian medical journals. I just sat there going, oh my God, there's all of these different jobs. So I felt like my kind of eyes had suddenly opened, and I thought I've spent the last 4 or 5 years really wanting to make a change but being too scared, and I thought maybe I'll just have a go. So I applied for 2 or 3 jobs, got them all. And I ended up taking a job at Saatchi, the advertising agency, in their health division. And I loved it. Waved goodbye to academia. Was a wee bit nervous about that. However, I have to say one thing did make that transition and that decision a little bit easier. Was it about... when I was doing my interviews for these different science writing positions, I found out I was pregnant. So, it was kind of like, well, the next stage of life's going to happen anyway. So this is a big change, right? Having a baby is a massive thing. I might as well make the leap now and kind of see what's going to happen. So I interviewed for these positions. I took my wedding and engagement ring off when I went to those interviews because I was so petrified that they might think, here's someone newly married who's not yet pregnant. She'll be having, this is like mid-2000s. So I interviewed pretending I was single, even though I was just about 6 weeks pregnant. And then after I'd been working the job for a couple of months, I was like, yes, by the way. And it was just this whole new world. One of the most exciting things, not being in academia anymore, well, there was a couple of things. One was how quick it moved. And this is Saatchi, so, really creative, dynamic advertising agency with all of this kind of stuff going on. And essentially what we were doing was writing pamphlets and flyers and information for doctors to give patients about, you're newly diagnosed with asthma. Here's a 2-page flyer all about your asthma diagnosis. I was doing conference coverage. I was writing slide sets for specialists. I was doing all of this research and learning about all of these different subjects again that kind of, instead of being so narrow, it was incredibly broad. I might have to learn about inflammation. I might have to learn about asthma. I might have to learn about statins and high blood pressure. I might have to learn about schizophrenia and get really up to speed very, very quickly. It was very fast. It was very dynamic. And you would write stuff and then people would say, that was great. Thank you so much. Well done. Unlike in academia, when they just kind of beat you down with a baseball bat and make you feel like rubbish.
Not good enough.
It was never good enough. Instead of it not being good enough, everyone was so appreciative of the work you did. And they would say, that's great. We're going to make a few quick edits. And then it would, you would write something. And then 2 weeks later, it would be turned into a glossy brochure that would be sitting in a doctor's office. And I was like, how does that happen that quick? So it was incredibly exciting and validating. And I just absolutely, I was sitting at a desk, but it was all right because I was pregnant. So I feel like my world sort of opened at that point. Anyway, I went to have this baby, Harry, who's now 11 and a half. And I started noticing with these agencies that they had a lot of freelance people working for them. A lot of the work, when there was overflow, there was these freelancers, and so then I went off and had my baby, and then the agency would get in touch and say, well, that program you were working on travel vaccines, any chance you can, do the next phase of that, but just do it at home. And I was like, oh, this is a pretty good gig. I get to sit at home and do that. And so that really, by default, this kind of business of freelance writing and consulting kind of started. And so really for the first sort of 5 or 6 years, I had another little boy a year and a half later, Jamie. So I've got 2 boys, they're now 9 and 11. The first sort of 4 or 5 years of motherhood, which were pretty hard, I had an outlet, which was doing all this freelance writing and consulting.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, you haven't been able to get a word in, so I might just stop for a moment.
No, I love the story.
It's fascinating, and I love how you, just went through the whole process, and you touched on a lot of the things that we talk a ton about with our interview folks, people who are transitioning out of academia, is that identity piece. I heard a lot of that coming up. How do you feel about that now? I mean, that's something that I've been continuously healing. Derek can reflect on that too, but I'm curious, like, where you're at now with this idea of, like, I went to Oxford and I got a PhD, but like, I didn't follow the traditional path, but I am, like, I appreciate my journey. Like, where are you with that?
Look, I think it's so, like, times have changed so quickly.
Sure.
There's like gig economy in the world. The world in 2019 is such a different place than it was in 2006. And we now have access, and we can kind of see all of the different things people do, and it's perfectly acceptable to have a few different kind of things on the go. I still call myself a neuroscientist because now I teach and I write, and I've written a book, and I teach these online courses, and I do a bit of TV and radio, and I do all kinds of things, and I'm always introduced as a neuroscientist. The only time I occasionally think, is, occasionally some dickhead on Twitter will say, you can't call yourself a scientist if you're not working in academia anymore. And I just kind of think, oh yeah, mate, it's always a bloke, right? Kind of flip the bird to them over the digital bird. Kind of thing. I'll call myself whatever I like, dude. You can't use doctor. Why would a PhD use the word doctor in front of their name? You just kind of think, God, if you've got nothing better to do than tell me that. And I was like, I quite frankly, I can do whatever I like. And that's why I left academia, because one of the most wonderful things about that is that there's I often think, I kind of have this vision of making me like inside this little tight box, like trying to push my way out and bang my head against it. And now I just have this ultimate freedom. And I think as an academic, and most people will be able to relate to this, you're incredibly motivated and driven. You like a lot of autonomy. You got there because you're smart and hardworking. And entrepreneurship, running your own business, whatever you want to call it, it kind of feeds that. You've got, you know how to work hard. You know how to follow through on a project. You know how to set a goal and reach it. You know how to just get it done without anyone having to look over your shoulder. And in fact, having someone look over your shoulder can be incredibly demotivating, and you lose that autonomy and agency. So the identity thing, I occasionally it will sit slightly uncomfortably. I kind of think, oh God, am I being a bit of, should I be using the word doctor in front of my name? And honestly, I think I've got a business now. I'll kind of spin it whatever way I like. Sometimes I use it. I often throw out Oxford Educated because it's such a recognisable brand. I think, well, I'm building a business. Why not use what I've got? But I don't. I think because I have so much now, I just have so much freedom and agency over the decision making. And if something interests me and I want to pursue that, I feel so fulfilled and free in my decision making that those kind of occasionally those little decision making things don't worry me. And really, it's only ever if someone else questions it, and it goes back to that. I mean, I don't really need someone else making the decision about what I call myself, do I? I
think it's interesting in this space, the title of doctor or PhD, even mentioning it. It's this entrepreneur space is so based upon actions and like what you actually do, and the titles are used in almost these like very fluffy ways anyway. So like someone with the PhD saying I'm Dr. So-and-so, you have a lot more evidence backing up that claim than someone in a marketing space who's, best-selling author on Amazon, which is probably true.
Yeah.
But
Oh, for sure. And I kind of think, like we've all got to, you've got to sell your business. You're working on it. You've got to use what you've got, and the thing is, you can do what you like. You don't have to ask anyone for permission. So I know there was a few years ago, there was this bit of a trend in this online space, because I have a lot of coaches who kind of come in to do my education programs, and there was this. And I remember meeting a psychologist once who was told, don't tell anyone you're a psychologist. People will find it a bit threatening, kind of hide that bit away and just focus on, that you have health coaching qualifications. And I was kind of like, what? What's that all about? I think that's just a story made up by the people who didn't go to university and get the qualifications to make themselves feel better.
Yep.
I'm
like a psychologist helping people with health is like a great combination. And so much of what we just related to that.
You don't have that.
Yeah. So interesting. I was thinking we could go down the path of chatting about your course, actually, because you do have an academy, and I'd love to talk about that, because we do like talking about how people are teaching and showing their research if they do research, and yours is really connected. And I also love that you get credits for folks that take it and enroll. So why don't we talk a little bit about the birth of that program and how that has changed your business and what it's doing for your business currently?
Yeah, sure. Well, so as I said, I was freelance writing for quite a few years, and really enjoyed that. But you reach a bit of a bottleneck when you're consulting and writing, because there's only so many hours in a day. So being the researcher I am, I'm going to research other online business opportunities. And thought, well, and this is 2012. I was like, I'm going to start a blog. And at that time, we were really starting to see the kind of the rise of the wellness blogger. This is back in the days when everyone blogged. And it was like, you've got cancer, have a coffee enema and cure yourself, or drink lemon and water every morning. And,
that's still happening
all that kind
7 years later. I've heard
that.
I just read that blog.
All of that woo-woo kind of wellbeing world, right? And I was like, who are these unqualified people? And so, initially I would kind of go on and I'd make a few little comments questioning them. And then I thought, that's just hopeless. And I thought, well, if they can talk about health, from their perspective, I thought, why can't I, as a scientist, talk about my love, neuroscience, but use their kind of way of connecting with people? And so I was sort of studying what they did, and I thought, they're chatty and they're warm and they're conversational and they're connecting and having conversations with the people they read. And I thought, why don't scientists do that? Can't. Surely there's a space for scientists to do that. So I started a brain health blog where I could kind of talk about brain health and wellbeing, but talking about evidence, using kind of science evidence to back up the stuff I was saying. And that was really useful, because in a way in Australia, it was a fantastic niche, and that I started getting all of the, if there was freelance writing or consulting with any brain space, that they would come straight to me. So I got some jobs doing more kind of well-known media. So the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation here in Australia, I sort of started doing stuff with them. But again, I was at a bit of a bottleneck. And then I heard about this. I used to listen to a lot of online business podcasts. By this point, 2013, 2014, 15, podcasts were a thing. And I started hearing about online courses, and I thought, well, I started seeing the people who were coming through to my website. The traffic was a lot of people within it. The umbrella term I now use is the helping professions. So people who are maybe counsellors or therapists or psychologists, social workers, and these world of kind of health, lifestyle, wellbeing professional coaches, wanting to learn more and more about neuroscience. And I started hearing all these neuroscience-y terms being used in the general public, like neuroplasticity and brain wiring, and people started talking about the gut-brain connection. And I was like, how are you all talking about neuroscience? So I kind of saw a bit of a space there. I thought, well, I'm the one who talks about neuroscience. How can I thought, well, I'd like to create a course. I just want to teach neuroscience. That's quite frankly all I'm really interested in. I just like the content. I like the stuff. who could be an audience that I could teach an online course to. And I very, very, very quickly decided I did not want to teach neuroscience to Joe Public, because a lot of the people that are coming looking at people who are in a very desperate point in their life. Maybe they've got a diagnosis of a brain tumor in a family member, or someone's got a child's been diagnosed with autism, or a family member's got Alzheimer's disease, and they're really desperate and they're clasping for straws. And neuroscience education isn't going to help them. So I thought, I don't want to help them. I want to help the people who are helping them. And so I decided if I targeted professionals and taught neuroscience to professionals, that there was that kind of a gatekeeper and space there. But I didn't want to be dealing with people who were emotionally fraught. I wanted to be dealing with the people that were helping them. And I very quickly realised as well, having done a lot of when I was doing a lot of the freelancing work, a lot of that was putting together professional development programs, continuing professional development for doctors and nurses. And I thought, there's this whole industry there. They all have to do so many hours training a year. I thought, well, if I create a program that gives them their professional development training hours, then not only will they want to do the program, they have to do the program. And they have to do so many hours a year. There's going to be an endless market of people within there. So when I started putting together the program, that was very much my idea. It was professional development training. And then I knew also if a lot of these people have their own businesses, I can charge more. I'm not selling a program for $30 to people who are upset about their diagnosis. I'm selling a $1,000 program to professionals who need to do the training to help those people who are upset. And that was very much my focus from the beginning. And so, it was hard cobbling it together initially, I have to say. I kind of had a plugin and a WordPress site, and it was all very, very.
It's a lot. Yeah.
I feel like I had about 30 pieces of software all kind of taped together, and everything was kind of just sort of working. But when I launched it, must have been September-ish 2015. And the first, so I launched and I ran it over I don't know whether I did 6 or 8 weeks. And I had 70 people sign up. And
nice.
I remember the very first purchase of a spot came about 20 minutes after I sent the email out saying, hey, it's open. And I couldn't stand up because I freaked out. So on my, I went, oh my God, someone actually bought it, and my legs went all shaky, and I tried to stand up and I couldn't stand up. I was like, oh my God, it's going to work. And I had 70 people that very first launch, which was incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I was like, oh, well, this is going to work.
Yep.
And then, then it's really, I've kind of, then it's really gone from there. A few years ago, I moved to Kajabi, New Kajabi. Or Kajabi as it's now called.
A lot easier.
Oh, my God. Instead of, one little thing would go wrong and they have to call a web developer, and the web developer would say it's the fault of PayPal, and PayPal would go, no, it's the fault of the plugin. The other plugin would say it's the fault of the other plugin, and eventually everyone would just blame Gmail or something. And so I moved everything over to Kajabi about 1.5 years ago, which it was seamless. And then really, and perhaps it's quite useful to talk about, I've changed the structure of the course based on the feedback from the students.
Yes,
and that's been really,
that.
really, really, really important. And each time I deliver the program, it's a little bit different to the previous time based on what the students are saying about their needs and their learning and how I can make it work for them. Because they aren't just doing this because they want to do it. They're doing it because they need to do it for their professional development. So I better make sure that they're learning this stuff and it's useful and it's impactful. So a large part now of what I do in terms of delivering the program is not so much thinking about the content. Sometimes I think it might be a bit content heavy, but it is neuroscience. It's not lemon and water juice course.
That doesn't count for professional development.
Have a bit of content in there, but I think really deeply about how I deliver that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it an asynchronous course, or is everyone starting at different
everyone
times?
Starts at the same time, so I run it twice a year because one of the so I get a lot of coaches come through, and a lot of them go through to try and get some credibility, which they should, through the International Coach Federation. So the course is accredited with them, and as part of an accreditation with them for ongoing professional development, you need to have a certain component of online, but a certain component of live interaction with the instructor. And the only way to really kind of make that doable for me on my time is to run it live. Well, I say live, it's online, but over, kind of 8, 10, 12, and it started off at 8 weeks, and now it's up to 12 weeks. The extra weeks are actually just weeks off because people were like, oh my God, I can't keep up, need a bit of a break.
Perfect.
So at the beginning of each week, I drop a lesson. Initially, it was like a 1-hour video lecture. Now it's, each 1 hour of content is broken down into about 5 or 6 little bite-sized videos, so they can kind of watch them in one go. They get I hate worksheets. I hate filling out forms, but I've been told by various adult learning professionals that one of the best ways to embed your learning is to handwrite notes based on what you've learned. So they get reasonably that you kind of get like I call it the notebook, a PDF download, which is sort of facilitated note taking, and I encourage them to use old-fashioned pen and paper because that's a better way to learn than tapping notes. And then at the end of each week, we have a 1 hour live Q&A via Zoom, because that then fulfills the requirement of having the live instructor time that a lot of them need for the professional development training, which initially was quite confronting for me because I don't know the answer to every single question people ask. Although now I've had about 6 or 7 launches, maybe 6. I kind of know what questions they're going to ask, and in a way now, if I redo a lesson, I know what questions people always ask, so I can kind of think there was a real gap in my teaching there because they kept asking that question. And so then I can make sure that I then tweak the content or my delivery to pre-answer that question. So for me, it's just been a constant process of getting feedback, and I get feedback at the end of the course and then tweaking and changing the delivery to make sure that these people learn in the most useful way, because they're busy professionals trying to learn neuroscience, and so I have to make it work. It's my job to make it work for them.
How do you promote it? Do you where are you going to institutions that employ these folks, or is it actually on a consumer-based basis?
So I've got an email list that I've kind of slowly built up over the years. Through my blog and through social media, occasionally I run Facebook ads, and that kind of, over the years has slowly built up, and people can pre-register. The next round is in September 2019. People can pre-register, and so I sell, and then I do all the marketing through social media and my email list. But I do also do a lot of public speaking.
So people sign up or get on your list.
Yeah, and typically I will speak in schools, or I'll speak to a psychologist association, or I'll speak. Recently I did a talk at the Australian Hypnotherapy Association. So I'm asked, so a lot of the time, and if I speak for free, which I don't like doing, but if I do speak for free, if those are the people who are going to come and do my course, then I might speak for free, and then I can flog the course. I've got, I've had beautiful made on Canva. I made some really lovely flyers, and I can kind of hand them out. And generally, if you speak for free, then I can kind of say, look, do you mind if I talk about my course at the end? Not as a hard sell, but then I will often very much frame my talk around and give myself room to say, and in my online course, we would talk about this, and students might ask me that, and then I can kind of integrate that very gentle touch, I suppose, selling within the talks that I give. But then that really just restricts me to an Australian audience. I would say just over 50% of the people who have done my program are from the US, North America, which is interesting. And I mean, each kind of launch I do, I'm kind of waiting and wondering and hoping it's gonna go again, but so far it doesn't. And this particular the last few months, for the first time, I've offered a self-study, what the industry might call an evergreen online course, because I do get people coming through and saying, oh, look, I don't have time now. And they might just want it, they're just really interested in the content, not so much in the Facebook group and the professional development hours. And so I've kind of now got two levels. You can just access the online content only, study anywhere from, in your own space, but you don't get the professional development hours. And then I've got the kind of the bigger, I call it the scholar program, which gives people, they get to ask me questions, they get a one-on-one call with me. I don't know how that's going to go.
Oh, nice.
I'm doing that for the first time this time. I don't know whether I'm going to regret that, because I'm going to spend, the next 3 months on the phone. I'm not very... Give me a mic like now. Give me a TV camera. Give me a stage in front of 2,000 people. I'm very happy. One-on-one coaching. Oh, it's not really my forte. I like talking
you'll find out if you like
talking at people about neuroscience. Yeah. I don't really like counselling people through their process. But, it's all part of giving them more value for... and
seeing if you like it, and if you don't like it, you don't offer it.
Yeah. And I think it's to give, it kind of justifies, bumping up the fees, and you've got to build your business, right? I don't want it to stagnate.
Sure.
So it's, and the beauty is, you can try things out. If they work, great. If they don't work, well, you go back to the drawing board.
Fail hard and fail fast. There you go. Keep going. I love it.
What was the accreditation procedure like to get the program recognized?
So here in Australia, a lot of the, like, say, psychologists and teachers and nurses can put together their own kind of professional learning goals for a year. And some courses that they may do may be accredited by the Australian Psychological Association, for example, does accredit some programs. But if a psychologist says, on my learning calendar this year, I want to learn about neuroscience, and then they can choose to do my course, which is not accredited by them but recognised, because obviously I've created something that is professional. So it doesn't have to be. A lot of people get the hours. I give them a certificate with the hours, but it's not accredited. The International Coach Federation has gone down the path of accrediting, which I think is good, because it's a very unregulated industry, and so it needs some gatekeepers in there, or else it's just going to go wow. So that process, it's like writing a grant application. You just go and answer all the questions, talk about, you have to put in your CV, your learning outcomes, a description of each of the various lessons and their content, and they've got various criteria that have to be fulfilled for their various learning outcomes within the association. So you kind of go through and match all of them up. It's really just administrative paperwork. And box ticking to go through, give them access to the program, and I guess they double check you've said what you've said, you are who you say you are, and then you can then say, and then they will say you can award this many hours using our name, and then essentially that is based on the number of hours of asynchronous learning, so video. And then the live interaction they have with me. They all have to do, my students might have to do another hour or so a week, maybe. At the moment, they get 28 hours or 27 hours over 12 weeks. But they probably have to do more work than that, but there's no way to validate that.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's kind of, that's I guess what happens with professional development. And then I do a multi-choice quiz, which is not the best way to embed learning, although testing is a really good way. Self-testing is a really good way to embed learning. But a multi-choice quiz at the end, and as I say to the students, this is not about you this is a box tick that you've got to do so I can give you a certificate. Right. And then it means I don't have to read essays. Although I have just put together a second kind of little course, because my students all kept saying to me, one of the pieces of feedback I got was, what's next, and how can we have more class interaction? Because I think they all got sick of listening to me. So I put together a kind of a smaller kind of a quicker course I put together based on my book, which looks at women's brain health, kind of the female brain through the lifespan, a womb to tomb look, and each chapter looks at a different point in life, like in utero and childhood, puberty, menstrual cycle, pregnancy, menopause, looking at the neurobiology of those phases. And I thought I'll do it more of a book club, so I kind of sit and have a bit of a 10-minute chat to camera about the chapter, talking about interesting scientists I spoke to in the research for that.
That's cool.
They go away, fill out so as I say to them, you haven't got hours of video to watch. 10 minutes of me kind of chat. They fill out they do their notebook, which is, again, facilitated note-taking, and then we get together and have a Zoom chat. But instead of me doing a Q&A, they all talk to each other about their experiences.
Oh, nice.
I didn't have a massive uptake on that. I was surprised because everyone kept saying, oh, well, we want to do it, we want to do it, we want to do it. And I was like, well, here you all go. And I was like, right, okay. You say you want it, but it wasn't a failure. I've had 900. I've had about 950 people. I'm nearly going to hit 1,000 people do the Neuroscience Academy. I had about 950 people, and I think 18 of them took up the offer to do the second one. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe you don't. You say you want it, but maybe you don't. I don't know. It's August.
Isn't that
maybe,
funny?
The Northern Hemisphere people, it's the wrong time of the year, but it's when it suited me. Who knows? But so it's a much looser, different sort of style rather than more of a lecture style. It's much more conversational, and everyone's kind of coming together and sharing their thoughts. The assessment at the end of that, they're going to give a little 3 or 4 minute presentation to the rest of the group about a particular topic that they have chosen from the book, and in a way of, here's a topic, here's how I would talk about it to a non-professional or a non-expert in this. I'll explain what happens to your brain during pregnancy. This is how I would talk about it to a client who's pregnant. And that'll be my assessment that time. Cool. So I just wanted to try something a little bit different. And I had a lot of fun with that. I think it's less tight and less hours, but not maybe I'll put that out to the general public. Maybe that will have a bit of a different uptake. I don't know. I have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah, possibly. I think there's a lot of talk about that, so that kind of space. I like it, and I think that's our job, kind of, as we have businesses, we're testing things. I mean, marketing is all about testing, and you never know. Even just selling to people that have already bought from you, that audience is very different than the potential mainstream audience that could buy if you did a round of morning shows or whatever, right? Where people are like, oh, that book sounds interesting. Oh, she's hosting a book club. Like, how cool is that? And so it's just playing with that kind of stuff. But thank you for sharing, just in being transparent about that thought process, because I do think that helps a lot of people who are teaching in their business and selling products and playing with levels of access, right? And the ways that we deliver things and the things that our students are asking for. I think that's really
and
great.
I think as a researcher, for me, learning about how people learn that's not something I really knew. And I have really, because I just love learning new stuff. That has been fun to apply. Like, I can learn it, and I can actually do something with that information in my, just little things like just use pen and paper to write notes, because you actually have to write down the gist of an idea, rather than if you're sitting at your computer typing, you just might as well be a court, sitting in court, like, doing the transcribing. It's not going in through your brain, whereas a pen you have to. So just little things like that. That's cool. Which I love teaching. And then, it's like you can actually be useful and use that info for students.
Yep. Oh, that's fun. Cool. Well, it's been so fun talking with you, Sarah. I'd love for you to share with us quickly where people can find you and learn more about you, where you're maybe hanging out on social. If you want to share some of that.
Yeah, sure. So I have I'm trying to up my Instagram game at the moment.
Oh, cool.
Because I think it's a really fun way
one. I like it.
It's a really fun way to educate people. And, you can use little emoticons and so I'm probably, and I share that through to my other socials. So what's my Insta name? I'm a bit hopeless. Sarah Marie McKay, MAREE McKay. is my Insta name. And I do lots of kind of little like neuroscience-y type, educationally, entertainment-y, silly things on there. I've got 2 websites. The info about the course is theneuroacademy.com. The course is called the Neuroscience Academy, but the URL I could only buy a few years ago was theneuroacademy.com. And then I have all the rest of my stuff is housed on yourbrainhealth.com.au, which was the blog that I sort of started back in 2012.
Nice.
And, you can find out about books and TV shows and all the other sort of bits and pieces that I do on there as well.
Awesome.
What was your book title?
It depends where in the world you live. A bit like J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter series. It's got different titles and covers in different countries. In Australia and the US, which is probably where most of your market is, it's called The Women's Brain Book, The Neuroscience of Health, Hormones and Happiness.
Nice. Well, we will link to all of that goodness below in the show notes. Thanks so much for hanging out.
That was good.
I know it's early where you are, but that was it was great to hear about what you're up to in the world. Very interesting.
Indulging my
I really enjoyed the story.
opportunity.
No.
It's just lovely to just chat about yourself. I know quite a lot about that topic.
Right?
That's perfect.
Fun. That's part of the game. Very cool. Well, thanks for everything you shared because that was really great.
Okay, cheers. Thanks, guys.